What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 5 with Behind the Line with the Cake Factory. Again, joining me today is Alyssa. And today we actually have a special guest. His name is Peter. And Peter is from Muscle Medics, right?
The Muscle Medics, yeah.
The Muscle Medics. We're going to kind of discuss how important it is to be healthy and not just in the gym, but outside the gym. It's really important that people just take note that, muscle work, stretching, and all those other things play a big role in how well you progress in your goals as far as like either weight loss, muscle gains, things like that. And then as you get older, it just helps overall, just everything else. A little background with Peter here. Where did you start as far as how did you get into bodywork, by the way? Actually, I don't even know that story.
Well, I started more with personal training when I was like 20 years ago, and just normal personal training. Then I got into CrossFit and like Olympic lifting, and then started coaching that. And it was when I was doing Olympic lifting, I got a lot of injuries. It's just pretty hard on the body. There's a lot of overuse injuries from that. And so I actually needed help with a knee problem that I was having, and found a bodywork guy that helped me pretty drastically. So that sparked my interest. And then I got into massage about like 8 years ago. And it was around the same time that I was working with the injuries that I had from Olympic lifting and doing it on myself. And then I ended up going to Colorado Springs and getting some certifications from there, and really started to apply bodywork like 5 years ago. And yeah, it's a combo of the science behind it and how our body is supposed to move, and everything that we do to basically restrict that, and how much that was hindering a lot of growth in myself and a lot of people that I see competing or athletes. So I kind of got into it from injuring myself, and then found that I was really good at finding out what was wrong with people and being able to help them balance themselves out, fix injuries, and ultimately progress in their goal or whatever direction that they were headed.
I remember meeting Peter for the first time. It was at Boulevard during COVID. Obviously, you two working together. And then I don't think a lot of people realize that what you do, it's kind of almost like a cheat code, especially being a personal trainer too. Kind of understanding the body in the manner that you understand it, like the massaging, the active release tension, the structures of the body itself, whether it be structural as far as the bones itself or anything mechanical like the ligaments and tendons. It's almost like a cheat code when you're a personal trainer, because you see and hone in on things that a lot of people, myself or even you, it takes us a little bit longer to see, right? I remember the first time I went to you for some body work. I didn't know that I needed to strengthen my neck. I didn't know that, my traps needed to be more strong, needed a little bit more strength, considering how big they are, And I don't think a lot of people realize that when you're dealing with somebody like yourself and the techniques that you provide and the services that you provide, it isn't that spa type of
not at all
massage, right? I mean,
no, not at all.
I mean, no. To me, the way that I best way, like,
you fall asleep sometimes.
Yeah,
but not because it's comfortable.
No, I don't know what it is. I think it's just because I go into a breathing exercise. But I explained to somebody today, because they're like, "Man, why are you so tired?" And I go, "Well, I had some muscle work done today." And they're like, "Oh, muscle work? Okay, you got a nice massage?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
You're like, "Yeah, I wish."
A nice massage.
Nice eating.
People, they hear like a Swedish massage, the top layer of the muscle, whatever. Yeah. And then they hear about a deep tissue massage, get into the belly. And then I explained to this girl today, I go, I was getting that tissue that was right above the bone. He was going that deep. He was going past the belly of the muscle, and he was breaking up that surface tissue above my bone. And they're like, is he sticking his fingers in your breaking? Is he cutting you open? What's going on? But I don't think people really realize how important it is to really get to that level as far as muscle therapy is concerned. So can you just kind of explain to me, like, I think most of us are going to be familiar with regular
massage tissue, but
soft
what you
tissue.
do is definitely
You do more like soft tissue.
Everything I do is soft tissue.
Yeah.
Everything I deal with is soft tissue work. But I mean, it really breaks down to everybody overtrains, right? And whether it's because they're literally overtraining or they're not educated enough to realize how to split up a certain muscle group, so they're just hammering like a certain part of their back. But everybody overtrains. A lot of the athletes I see overtrain, and it creates this muscle it's not malleable, it's not pliable, it's not moving like a muscle should, it's not moving like a rubber band. It becomes like a chain. And then when that happens, it's just throwing things off. Your body can't move how it should. It's not getting good blood flow to that muscle, and it's just this compound problem. And that's why it's an overuse injury. It just becomes so chronic because they don't know how to get out of the muscle. The muscle never gets a chance to heal, and it just turns into this mess. And
so I was going to say, I think that you probably deal with more injury-prone people due to the fact that they overtrain and don't release that chain, I should say.
It's a combo of imbalances, right? Like in legs, someone can have overpowering quads, and that's going to throw their hips off, and it's going to go up the chain to their back, and also going to cause knee problems, hip problems, and they're not going to be able to train their glutes properly. I work on people that are at a desk all the time, and that also turns into an overuse injury in the fact that they're in a certain position and the muscles in their back and that are supporting their head have to be on for a certain period of time. So there's like two sides to it, but most of it's overuse. Rarely do I have people come in that just like, I freaking blew my pec apart. I mean, it happens sometimes, but a lot of it's like chronic overuse injuries that I see. And really, that's what starts to perpetuate into bigger things, bigger problems. Then it turns into tears and other problems like that.
I mean, I started coming to Peter because of my migraines.
Mm-hmm.
And then, migraines. And then come to find out it's because I wear a headset and I game and I'm like this and I'm just crunched up in this ball. And he's like, it's not your neck so much as it's your chest and your shoulders and everything else,
Yeah, it's the synergy of it, right? It's like if everything's short in the front, it tends to want to be there. And your body likes to be efficient at what it does. It runs on calories, so it's like, I want to be efficient at this. So if you're always here, it's going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to chill here. The muscles in the back are always going to chill long. They're always going to be supporting your head. You kind of jaunt it forward, and that inch forward makes it go heavier and heavier and heavier. And now you have weak, long muscles in the back that aren't really supporting anything very well, and the front's all tight, and then you try to fix it, and you just don't know how. And then you have headaches and things like that.
What would you say is, I know that one of the things that I've dealt with being a personal trainer, and then obviously with most men, and I'm sure for you, sis, with most women, what would you say for women Peter would need to focus more on with women when they train as consistently as they do with you?
Usually for the girls, it's really not knowing how to either get into their glutes, or most women overly train our legs so much that everything gets
their lower
extremely their lower back gets shot, their knees are like messed up, their hips are all off, and they're always just in this chronic like hedge over and my back's killing me, and it perpetuates up to their traps and their upper back area. That's a huge things that we see a lot too.
I mean, they are like girls tend to train their lower halves quite a bit and their glutes quite a bit, and their piriformises get locked up. They're doing like this band work. And I'm not saying like your clients in particular, but just in general, I see it.
Because women like focusing on the lower
But I
half.
mean, it's
Yeah.
truth. So, but it tends to be either they don't know how to like get into their adductors and pull them into a squat, so they're in their quads. Their quads get so tight that it ends up pulling them into like anterior pelvic tilt, and their lower back hurts. Or they're not
Chris.
supporting their lower back in like deadlifts or squat movements, and there's flexion and movement in their lower back, which there shouldn't be, which will cause back problems. So a lot of it is still overuse or lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge.
That's
Yeah.
I think it's the reason why
what it
y'all
comes
should
down
come to the Cake Factory.
Yes. A lot of
Okay.
knowledge going on in here. And we will tell it to you too.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the difference too.
Absolutely. And with men, what I've noticed was chest, shoulders. Men tend to have like a lot of like frontal delt issues. Constantly.
What I see a lot with competitors, I mean, in general, tight coracoid process, which is like your pec minor and the short head of your bicep and the coracobrachialis, and all these muscles do like pressing, flexion, chest stuff, and all that stuff connects into your shoulder blade, and so all that being tight just pulls you forward, right? And another thing I see is everybody's teres major is so strong, and that causes scapular winging. And you see all these competitors that are doing pull downs, and it's like a teres major row, and they're not getting into like the iliac part of their lat.
The lower half.
They're not getting into the lat that connects into their actual hip.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
They're going back and getting into their teres major, which is the muscle right above your lat on the shoulder blade.
And would you say that that's because most people are so used to doing like a wide grip type of pull down or a wide grip type of row?
I think it's like wide grip. It's just trying to pull weight. And so you tend to rock back. And as soon as the elbow tracks back, you're teres major. So it's a lot harder to turn the elbows in and pull like straight down into your hip and get into those fibers. And people want to just lift weight. But then they're like, okay, first movement should have been your iliac lat, but it was teres major. Second movement should be your lumbar lat, but it's teres major because you're just continuing to use it. Then that gets exhausted, so you start pulling elbow flexion with your bicep. And now you have huge teres majors, huge biceps, and like no back. And I see that a lot. So it's like teres major and then like just way too much pressing. And they just turn into this scapular winged, like rolled forward person. That is what I deal with a lot.
Would you say that your elbow in men, most especially because I don't think women really have this issue. They don't really necessarily train as heavy as men do on the upper body. But with men, their elbow placement is everything.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that in a sense of you have to line up the fibers. And so how you do that with your back is you're going to manipulate angles like a bench. You're going to manipulate grip, and you're going to manipulate where your elbow is, right? And so there's a couple of things you can control, also like grip and that sort of thing. But let's say for a pull down, it would be your elbow, right? If I'm pulling straight down into my hip, I can get into my iliac lat. If I start pulling back, I'm going to miss it. And so, yeah, that does kind of change how we line up fibers and how we can ultimately like grow our back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like with everything. Chest is the same way. It's just elbow placement, right? Like we can kind of change angle of a bench to get into our clavicular fibers of our pec. We can kind of change our elbow path to change which fibers of our sternal fibers we get into. And so all that is how we develop proper muscle. And I see people because they're not educated enough, or their trainer isn't educated enough to like push that information to them.
So kind of stemming back to like a lack of knowledge going out a little bit too.
It's a lack of knowledge, and like I'm I did it too when I first started. You know, I was like grip it and rip it. I lifted heavy. I thought just, you know, 1 rep max every week would get me bigger. You don't really, you're just trying to move weight from A to B. The people that you see that look good, you're trying to follow them, and they may not have the education that you need. But yeah, it does. It stems back to education, but also being able to apply it and feel it and connect with it, and the coach being able to see that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well, one of the things that I think is a huge benefit for having somebody come to you and work on you, get work done by you, is because if they want a better understanding of how to make a better connection in their muscles, having him
Yeah, it's
point out that pain is huge. I mean, like, I a lot of my shoulders don't hurt as much ever since. I definitely have seen a big difference in that. I remember him just touching my frontal delt was like, "Yo, calm down." You know what I mean? But I think like more than anything, that's everybody just comes in, they train, they train, they train. You know, like they may have their food okay, right? They may do some cardio.
yeah.
They're great at pushing the weight, but that stretching and mobility, you know, I think a lot of people don't talk about mobility. I mean, everybody talks about stretching, you know, like, well,
Yeah.
you need to stretch, but I don't think people realize the differences between stretching and being mobile.
yeah.
Can you explain the differences in
I-
the joints and how that works?
So, I mean, realistically, and you see it a lot in, I would say, like athletes. I'll just take like an NFL athlete for an example. They're strong, they're mobile enough, and they're mobile enough to go from A to B with like joints and whatnot. But their muscles get to the point where they're like so strong that when it comes to the point where they need that like flexibility, when we need to go a little bit past that point, they don't have it, and that's when like injuries happen. So I think mobility and flexibility obviously go hand in hand. Each muscle, each joint needs to be able to go through and articulate through a range of motion. But you have to be able to have quality tissue through that range of motion to also not have injury. I've seen people that can do the splits and they're like pretty mobile in that sense, but their muscles are still
Very weak.
or still very tight.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it'll cause
Injuries.
an injury if we push it in outside of that realm that they're comfortable being mobile in.
Right.
I had a buddy that he played football. His calves got tight. He still stretched. He was good, you know. And then he just got hit. He was in like this flexion, got hit, and his muscles weren't malleable enough to like take that hit, and it just tore his Achilles tendon.
Oh.
And so it's just there's a fine line where you have to find like strength and mobility and flexibility, and all of that together is going to equal like a healthy muscle. I believe that, and I'm not the best at, but I believe that you should make sure that when you're growing, you're keeping everything mobile and keeping everything flexible, making sure that your joints can go through the range of motions that they should. And that's how we're going to get the most benefit and the most like equal growth in our bodies too. I think that a lot of people just neglect it so much that I mean, you see it, like people grow too fast and they don't think about the mobility, and we're growing and we're just tightening up, and we just turn into this mess where now we can't really get out of it.
No, I agree. I mean, I used to force my clients to see him every couple of weeks. You know what I mean? But not only that, but I'm also one of the few, and you do it too. You know, we carry a gun. You know, we carry like either a Theragun or something similar to that. We carry you know, lacrosse balls.
Yeah.
We have bands. I think that a lot of people don't realize when training, you know, especially now, I guess more importantly now, it's because I'm older. I feel it more now than I ever have. And I think it's because of dropping from such a big weight and coming down and having so much muscle on my structure. now I really feel the differences in my mobility and flexibility. I feel it more now than I did when I was 40 pounds, 50 pounds heavier. It's weird.
I mean, it could be an age thing. It's just, I mean, and also
It's
like,
okay, you can say it's an age.
well, I mean,
thing.
it could be, but like over time, right? We grow these imbalances. So flexible, yes, cool. You can touch your toes, but like, are you able to be mobile through a range like powerfully?
Mhm.
You know, that can be caused from a bunch of different things. But over time, if we're not working on the things, they're gonna tend to grow imbalanced. It's just how life goes. You
Yeah.
know.
There's a movement that you made me do when I had first went to Peter. I call them around the worlds. They're basically me swinging a weight or my movement of my arm fully above my head,
Mm-hmm.
over my head, exercising through my scalenes and my traps. And I'll tell you, man, the first time I did that, I was sore all the way down through my
It's probably your serratus too and everything because you're having to
yeah.
like work on like scapular like retraction and protraction.
It was the weird, but my mobility after was huge.
Yeah, you can
Like,
probably actually get into your exercises a lot
well,
better
not
too.
only that, I
Train
can get
hard.
into a sweater without having to bend over. You know what I mean? Like it was just like I'm
Mhm.
swimming through a sweater trying to get my arms in and things like that. But now I was able to actually lift my arm up. It's a little bit tight right now, but
It's funny. It's funny because like I work on a lot of athletes but all the athletes, other than like the high level athletes have full-time jobs.
mm.
And so it's like what is your full-time job? And I'm more worried about that
Oh, of course.
because the working out is basically just throwing like an overuse blanket on top of that, right? It's like, what do you do for work? Oh, I'm a computer programmer. Okay, I already know this is a
Mhm.
problem, and you work out, so now it's just compounding on top of that. Um, and it's just funny to think about like all like you're talking. You have some like sheriffs that are watching the podcast and that sort of thing, or cops that are watching
Mhm.
the podcast. They're messed up too. The
Oh
belts
yeah.
that they have to wear, the vests they have to wear, they sit in the car, they get in, they get out. I work on quite a few of them, and then tattoo artists and like hairstylists and
I think that's the thing
trainers.
that a lot of people don't think of too is like what your job and what you do day to day, it compiles up together. So a lot of the girls and a lot of people that come into the factory are like, oh, I'm like, always have this going on, always have this going on. And we're all really good at watching people and stuff like that. And then you kind of make them aware of like, well, you are sitting 12 hours a day.
Mhm.
I'm sure your lower back and stuff are probably going to be
Yeah,
a little bit tighter because your hips are rolling under.
they almost
So
think it's like from the lifting, like
yeah.
well, no,
So,
it could
and
be
that's
something
like a
else.
big thing too that I have to tell people a lot too is like it's majority is not from like this lift or this workout. It's every single day for how many years you've been in this job or whatever. You've been like 10, 12 years. You've been sitting 10, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Do you move during like that any time during the day? Are you getting up? Are you like actually getting to squat, moving your body around,
They're like, yeah,
getting
I think
steps
so.
in?
It's
They're
like,
like, I think a little bit. Maybe I'll go get something out of the fridge or, I'll move around. I'll say,
something at the fridge.
yeah, or
Like,
I'll go say hi to somebody at, another desk. I'm like, that's not taking through any range. Like that's doing
I always tell
nothing.
people like, how long is this gonna take? My neck is really sore. How many sessions do you think? And it's like, well, I can't exactly tell you that, but how long has your neck been hurting? Oh, like 10 years.
No.
Okay. So
Mhm.
you've been walking into the forest for 10 years and you turn around and do you expect the entrance to the forest to be like right there? Like, oh, it's right there. It's
No.
like, no, it's going to
Yeah.
take some time to like
Right.
reverse. You have layers of muscle. I might have to work on the first layer so I can get into some stuff like you were saying. I don't necessarily talk about exactly what I'm doing the whole time I'm working with you guys, but it's like I may have to break through some stuff to get to what the actual problem is.
Mhm.
And it takes some time. And those big muscles are the big ones that are wanting to pull you out of place. And I got to get through that and then get to some other stuff that's causing like some rotational issues or whatever.
There is a point you made actually a couple to some of my clients, and even when you were starting to get into this, and we were experimenting around on difference. So, a little backstory: I'm probably like his number or ground zero patient. We'd probably call it. he'd have a scale of like, how messed up are you, is compared like 0 to my wife.
Yeah.
And I was like the top person of like, oh yeah, you're pretty close to like my
Well,
wife. That's pretty
her
bad.
cut marks, her and our old coach's cut marks would be like black,
Like super black.
you know?
I remember seeing a couple on.
Oh yeah.
And it was
and they would last for a while.
Yeah.
For some time.
I'm like, no, it's not good.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's not a good thing. And then it's taking that long. Your lymphatic system's all jacked up. But yeah, she was definitely
A lot. I mean, I had a lot of issues. I was in sports my whole life. I tore my rotator cuff pitching softball through college, volleyball player, basketball player. So joints, everything was messed up. Every job that I've had, I've been on my feet. We're racking, unracking, and I shift a lot. So, he'd have a field day trying to get through a lot of stuff. But he used to always tell me and tell some of my clients, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually
that.
just had a client come in like a week ago, and she goes, yeah, I'm like, everything hurts. I kind of feel like it hurts a little bit more. And I said, what did he tell you? She goes, it's going to be worse before it gets better. And I said, yeah, because again, you have years compiled of doing a certain pattern, being in a certain like way, working your job, life, kids, you're driving a car. Even think about, I have a client who drives her kid like 6 hours a day back and forth, shuttling. That's one leg shifting, so hip wise is going to go off. So it's all these little extra elements that we don't think about. And, I was explaining like, yeah, I mean, you had this much time of doing a certain way. And even in working out, right? And I tell you, even when we're training right now, you've been programmed or like you've been shown to do a certain thing for such a long time and wasn't really the best way or the most optimal route. So
Your
we
body
have to
just,
change.
learns that.
Exactly. It learns to get into this certain pattern, and then you try to switch it out into a certain pattern. It's uncomfortable. It's challenging, and you might actually be sore and hurt in other ways you've never really been because that's not something you've actually been used to doing, right? And kind of actually sitting into.
Yeah, a lot of it is innervation of nerves too. It's like blood flow is. I always tell people blood flow is everything.
Mm-hmm.
If a tissue's is not malleable or pliable and it's all contracted and restricted and twisted, it's not getting good blood flow.
Yeah, absolutely.
My goal is just blood flow, and to find what's happening. But your blood also innervates your nerves, and so if you don't have good blood flow, you'll lose innervation of the nerve. You won't feel what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm pushing on your glute and you're like, I feel pressure. I don't feel what's happening. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, I got hit by a truck.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's part of what happens. It's like, I have to get you guys back to, it sucks, but I got to get you guys back. And it's just part of it. And unfortunately, I'm the bad guy on that part. But.
Well, I mean, I saw you this morning, and I can tell you guys, I feel like I got hit by a truck.
Yes.
You kind of go through a little bit of a detox when you're somebody that he sees consistently, and he knows your body, and he's worked on you quite well. And he, like somebody like myself, I fall asleep, so he can pretty much destroy my body.
Do whatever.
Yeah, I think I've walked in on one of yours and I'm like, oh my God, that's gotta like be terrible. And you're snoring. I'm like, I know I'm me.
Like, I know I know his pain threshold where I can go. But I have a story about that pain stuff. But I had a client and she had her pit bull like pull her and it broke her arm.
Oh wow!
And so she had a problem for 6 months. She couldn't lift. She couldn't do anything. She was in a sling. I couldn't touch her because she was just, she was not there. And then she just came and saw me 3 weeks ago, and I was working on her, and she's like, "Yeah, I have no strength in my shoulder. I can do like 30s on this side. I can do like 10 on this side." I'm like, "Your bone is healed. Everything's good." "Yeah, collarbone's good. Everything's good."
It broke her collarbone?
It broke her arm.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Up near the joint.
Up near the joint, like right where the ball is. So the tug forward broke her arm.
Was she probably not?
She wasn't ready
really
for
tight,
it.
too.
Well, think about what that would do to all the muscles connected to that. But
all like instant spasm.
Yeah, and a break too.
Ooh.
That's a lot. So she came in. I'm working on her. I'm working on her rotator cuff, and then I get to her pec, and I'm like, that is terrible. Do a couple of things, trigger points, it releases, and I move my elbow like a half inch, and I barely press down, and this huge pop, and my elbow shifts down, and we both like stop. I'm like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I just need a second. I'm like, all right. She goes out. We go out, and I'm like, hey, I just want to see, oh yeah, I have better strength in my shoulder. I'm like, okay, cool. The chest. I was an EMT. I've broken people's ribs before, and it takes a lot. And so I was like, there's no way I broke her rib. And so I see her like 2 days later. How you feeling? She's like, I could barely move my arm. Like I could barely. It hurts to cough. I'm just like, is there any bruising? No, it's just so tender. I don't know what to do. I'm like, I've set ribs before. This, let's just give it a second. And I saw her 2 weeks later. How you feeling? I went and got an x-ray. I'm like, oh God, what happened? Everything's fine. They said you set my rib back.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. I was like, whoo, but that pain, right? Like
Yeah.
it was 2 weeks of severe pain because her body had been so out manipulating, controlling that rib and protecting it.
Yeah, she didn't even know.
That when I set it back in, what happened was her pec minor is connected to the rib.
Yeah.
And then it connects to the shoulder blade.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, it pulled her rib out.
Oh, wow.
And it had been out for like 6 months.
She didn't even know.
Nobody knew. And then I'm like, pop. But it was 2 weeks of like, oh my God, severe pain. And now she's like, I feel better. I have like,
I thought you were going to say you bursted a bag.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I broke her rib. I broke her implant. And she died, actually.
Implant. There goes her implant.
No, but just saying like, your body is so good at running away from pain.
Mm-hmm.
Manipulating limping. Why do we limp? Like you don't think about it, but we're just trying to get away from pain. Your body is good at it, so it'll manipulate, it'll switch, it'll change to get away from pain, and then that might actually make that muscle just pretty much lose innervation. You don't feel it, and then we have to get back in, correct it, and then you guys can train it and beat it up. So,
quick question here, because I don't think a lot of people realize or understand. Because most people that do get muscle work or get massages, they're not getting any scraping, they're not getting any cupping. It's not. I think it's more of something that's newer. You know what I mean? Like it's more of a service that's become more well known and more normalized, where people are using. But I still don't think some people understand what they're doing when they are providing cups or they are.
People do ask me all the time when I'll be like, are you okay? Have you ever got cupping before? Are you okay with it? They're like, yeah, I just don't really know. Again, it's all blood flow. So cupping has been around forever. There's a plethora of reasons to use it as far as traditional reasons. Why I use it is for blood flow. Mm-hmm. And what happens is everything that is circulating through our blood, like it enters our bloodstream, can get embedded in our muscle tissue. So if we're an athlete and we're taking gear or medications or secondhand smoke, toxins, right? Yeah. They'll come in and they, depending on blood flow, right? If you have a tight muscle, it can kind of start to kind of get stuck and it'll get embedded in the muscle tissue. So now that tissue's got hypoxic blood kind of stuck in there. And so to me, it's like, it's blood without nutrients. It's blood that should be taking waste and leaving. And so I'll use it to bring that toxic stuff more superficial so that the lymphatic system can work it. And that's why people get kind of lethargic afterwards. It's like, here's all these toxins and your lymphatic system's like, all right. But it does cause you to feel a little sick. Mm-hmm. The scraping is more so dealing with like superficial, like fascia. Mm-hmm. And I always try to explain to people like fascia is like the casing of a sausage, right? Like, you've seen them make sausage, right? So that's the fascia. The muscle inside needs to be able to be movable, pliable. And sometimes the fascia will like stick and bind. And so now it's almost like the muscle's like stuck inside it. And it can go cross muscle and it can kind of just adhere and bind and start creating shortness in muscle. Uh-huh. And so I explain to people, like, think of a wrinkled shirt, right? You put it on, it's like a belly shirt because it's all wrinkled. You're like, damn, this thing is short as hell. And then you iron it, and now it's a normal shirt.
Mm.
And so your biceps, a wrinkled shirt. I use my scraping tools. I can kind of break that stuff up, get some blood flow releasing, toxin resort release similar to cupping. But now you have this more pliable, malleable tissue that blood likes to circulate through versus just like bound up stuff. So there's benefits to both. I use them differently. I'll use them on one, like the same person. It just kind of depends on
What
the
they
muscle,
Yeah.
what I see, what I feel, and what I think is going to work the best, or what their body has responded to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I might not scrape everybody because some people are babies.
Scraping
Some
sucks.
people are hypersensitive.
I'm not gonna
Some-
lie.
It's not
I'd
fun.
rather get cupped.
I would
Scraping is
rather.
not
I mean,
fun.
I'd rather you drop an elbow in my
but
neck
like
or something.
for
and get
example, like
scraped.
your rectus femoris, like your center quad muscle, such a good muscle to scrape. Not that good to cup, but when you scrape it, you can get so much length through your hip flexor and your knee, and just release all those toxins. So that's when I know, like, hey, I'm gonna use that here.
Uh-huh.
Rotator cuffs, shoulders, back stuff. Cups work pretty well there. Scraping over your shoulder blade and into your ribs doesn't feel great, so you kind of use cups there. But it's nice to have different modalities, just because not everybody's the same. Injuries are different, and I may just have to kind of go around and see what's going to work the best for that person, and it gives me the freedom to be able to do that.
Well, I think like by doing all of those things, especially like the scraping, most especially by creating pliable muscle, you help reduce the injuries that could occur post therapy. A lot of people, I don't think they realize, like, perfect example is we had a client who went to go see a chiropractor, but the chiropractor didn't do any muscle work before they adjusted.
Yeah.
So
that's a big, yeah.
So right after they 2 days later, their hips went right back.
Yeah.
Everything went right back. And it's because I was like, hey, it's because he didn't break up and loosen up what was keeping your hips and all those other things in the area where they shouldn't be.
Yeah. Everyone always asks me about, what do you think about chiropractors? And I'm just like, well, they're good if they are setting up, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Like I like you said, I don't like when they just go in there and set something.
Yeah.
If you slipped and fell and you popped a rib out, like trauma based, and they go in and set a rib, like that's awesome. But if tight muscle is pulling you out of place, let's like talk about that a little bit. Obviously, chiropractor work can relieve pain, but 9 times out of 10, I always hear people like, yeah, I went to the chiropractor, he like pop me up, and like, but I feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not bagging anybody. I'm just saying, more times than not, with the world we're in today and our jobs and workouts and stress and this and that, it's overused muscles. Your muscles are too tight. You need to sleep, you need to rest, and you need just some massage, you need to drink some water. Like that's kind of how it goes. But they have a place.
My chiropractor scraped my skull.
Oh gosh.
My back ends of my skull.
Good. Well, that's kind of where that's. So he was talking about his head hurting, kind of moving his head up and down, and I actually, on one of my posters in the office, I drew the muscle in because it's the splenius capitis muscle, and it's just like, okay, we'll work on that. But that's probably what she was kind of getting into.
Yeah, he scraped she scraped the crap out of that, and I was like, what are you doing? Like I can handle pain pretty well, but that right there, I was like, and then he had these little tiny cups going down my right there, right, and then he was like, because I'm trying to get to this very top disc and adjust it, and I can't because it's so tight in that area. And I looked at him, I go, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I want is him to try to adjust my neck, and then it's worse later.
It's like, take a deep breath in, it's like, snap.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
You see a lot.
Yeah. And it's crazy because the differences with how people fitness is a big thing now. I mean, socially, it's just one of those things, right? San Diego is becoming a big mecca to fitness, but I don't really think people realize how important you are to their goals. And it's just like, again, we focus on the 23 hours. Remember, we talk about that all
Yeah,
the time.
absolutely.
You're 1 hour with us, you're an angel. The 23 hours, you're just where you're gonna F up.
Right.
You know, hell, man, you want help with that 23 hours? See him once every 2 weeks or
Yeah.
once a month, and it'll definitely help in that 23 hours because you'll have a better quality of life outside of the training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't really realize it either until I started working more with athletes. Like I knew that I helped people. Like they'd have a neck problem and I helped people but I didn't realize that what I did made that big of a difference until I started having athletes like, oh, I got my show. I got this important show. I got to make sure that I come to see you so I look good and this and that because, you know, not only is it, muscle tightness is obviously going to cause some immobility and some restrictions, but when it comes to like athletes and what we do, you can see it on stage. And that was kind of one of the cool things that I was able to start doing body work on athletes and kind of you can see the results like instantaneous because they're so lean.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll work on them, get blood flow, open up their
lats or the
rhomboids and the
chest.
transverse part of their traps, and then they're like, oh, I can lat spread, or like glute tie-ins for like the wellness girls. It was kind of cool to go that route, and then have athletes be like, oh, I was going to retire from. I had an athlete that is an Olympia athlete. He's like, I was going to retire from the Olympia, but I got body work on you, and he ended up finishing top 10.
Nice.
And he was like, I'm going to go again. And he's like, I'm excited because just that little bit of work opened up things where it just like changed things for me. And so that's cool to be a part of because ultimately I started off in fitness and like I do bodybuilding too. So it's cool to be able to have my passion like integrate with my work.
Well, yeah, you're also a personal trainer too, so it's great to be able to have all those aspects and see things that we normally don't see all the time. It's. I mean, I remember when you were at Boulevard, and I used to, hey, come here. I need you to look at this person right here. I did it a lot with CJ.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And he was like, oh, it's this. And I'd be like, oh, how come I didn't see that? You know what I mean?
I think it's because and it wasn't always like that. Because like over time I've learned every muscle in the body, and then you can just like picture it.
But I don't think it's just that too. I think you're in it too. So we always have these discussions all the time too.
Like in bodybuilding?
In bodybuilding, yeah, and in training and in movement and stuff, right? And there's a difference between books and application. And I used to preach this all the time too when I worked in physical therapy. Like I had the most amazing physical therapists working with us, but they have never stepped foot in a gym or had never done a sport in their entire life. And they're sitting here trying to tell this pro like baseball player or something how to get back into
how to rehab
your shoulder and pitch. And I'm like, have you ever actually pitched a ball? Have you ever played a sport? And it was like, no. Well, no, I used to run a little bit. And I was like, well, that's great, but that's not a sport. You know, and I think that is a huge thing too that, you don't really talk about. Well,
kind of marathons.
Marathons is different.
Half marathon.
It's
5K.
Which I actually did used to do, so I can't bash on that. But that was only because my rotator cuff was blown out. So, but that's a huge component too. That a lot of massage therapists or like what you call it ART, massage people are not fully invested in that eyesight. And I always tell him he reverse engineers things, and he has an engineer brain. That was
from engineer
something he was doing.
Don't you?
I was an engineer background.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I was kind of getting to, right? It's
yeah.
Like the application of bodybuilding. We know, like I've been injured a lot myself from being almost 40. It's like I've had a lot of the chronic stuff that people talk about. But then it's like I was an engineer, so I would go in and troubleshoot like large scale reverse osmosis systems, which was like filters and pumps and SCADA systems. And so you're like, oh, I hear this pump cavitating, which is like oxygen in the pump. And then so you're just going back, you just like think backwards, right? And the combo of that, there's cavitation in the pump. My shoulder hurts. It's like the same thing. And then just knowing the system or knowing the body, you just run it backwards. And it's just like, okay, shoulder. And then I just picture every muscle that goes into the shoulder. What muscle hurt? What movements hurt? Oh, this. And then it's just, you just start to hone in on what it is. Most of the time I can hone in and then I'll touch it, the muscle, and I can feel the lack of pliability to it. And then I kind of just know what's going on. And then you can go from there. But it is a combination of like being an athlete. I think having an engineer brain helps, and then just studying every single muscle for so long that it's just this like 3D print in my brain.
Right. You had mentioned ART. I had mentioned it earlier. Can you kind of give us the definition of what ART is?
So ART is like active release. So you think like self myofascial release, you're like foam rolling along a muscle.
Right.
Right. ART would be, instead of me foam rolling along a muscle, I'm like trapping a muscle, or I'm trapping tight muscle fibers that would be restricted through a range of motion, and then I'm helping, or I'm having you take it through range of motion. So it's a myofascial release through movement versus just like a foam, like me getting a thing and rolling it on your body, or me scraping something. It's taking muscles through proper range of motion, and then using that motion to help break down like the tissue, make it pliable, make it malleable, that sort of thing.
Well, when you're rolling and you're using a scraper, you're only getting so far of that muscle, right? But with you being on the muscle itself, whether it be your fingers, your elbow, or anything like that, and then you're forcing movement in it.
Yeah, you're forcing stretch.
Yeah, you're going deeper than deep tissue.
In a way, I like it a lot for joint. It's just amazing for joints. It's being able to isolate that muscle that's going to restrict the movement, and then just starting to work it through movement and work the blood flow and work the range of motion of the joint. I think it's really good because our body moves. So I like working on quads. I like scraping stationary stuff, biceps stationary, but they open, close. And so being able to see them in their function and be like, hey, oh, this is actually going through range of motion, or no, this is not going through what it should be. Let's go ahead and find the tissue within the muscle that's restricting that. Like for a pec, for example, it may be your upper clavicular fibers that come into your collarbone that's restricting motion versus your like lower sternal fibers. You'll kind of open it the same way, but you got to find where it is. Then you can start to kind of work on that active release. And that is important, but you have to be able to get to the point where that joint can start to want to go through that range of motion.
Would you say that's more painful?
No, because no. I don't think it's more painful, because when you're moving joints, like you have to be.
You've done it on my bicep. You're lying.
I know, right?
Like you have to be careful with the client, because the client is more guarded when something is moving. So I don't start it bad, but it could get bad. But usually it's like we'll kind of work into it. Where trigger points just sucks. I'm just gonna kind of get into that. So it's pick your poison.
Well, I mean, like more than anything, I think people just don't realize how important it is for you to focus on being well-rounded in your entire health of fitness. And a lot of that has to do with, being able to stretch and be mobile, along with having strong muscles, feeling good, looking good as well. And I think that comes down to like a lot of other things, like we were discussing in the beginning, like having somebody who understands the body, right? Because they have a background of not just fitness, but everything that goes along with what they're trying to accomplish.
Mhm.
And touching on that, I mean, there are people out there who create programs for people who probably shouldn't be creating programs for them. And do you see that more now? I mean, especially with the industry, blowing up as it has been, influencers out there all the time. You're seeing people who are, taking these PEDs and, performance enhancement drugs and really growing and doing all these things. They're following somebody else's program, but nobody's actually there watching them or giving them the education. And so then they end up with you with some sort of injury or some sort of problem or issue. Would you say that's more them or more the person who's provided the program?
Well, I think that as a person, you should probably do your own research, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
if you're following a coach, like do your research on the coach.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be your fault from the jump. But if you're entrusting your health in a coach's hands and the coach is not doing it right, that's the coach's fault. But you pick the coach. So it's hand in hand. I think a lot of it comes down to these coaches that they just cookie cutter a program, and they're not specifying what the intention of the program is. And I've pulled more personal training clients from body work and just like talking to people and like, okay, so what do you do for back day? And it's just like horrendous, And to be perfectly honest, I heard this somewhere and it really it resonated with me. It's like the most productive, well-designed programs look boring on paper.
Oh, yeah. Mine
Like
looks boring as
4
hell.
sets of
Yeah.
6 to 8 with a 2, it's just, it may look boring. But I think first off, most coaches don't understand how to get into muscles. Plain and simple. That's the really, really frustrating part that I see is like, even these high level coaches, yeah, like do your row. And it's like, are you, what row? Do you want me to do like thoracic stuff? Do you want me to do lumbar stuff? What am I doing? Then you end up just hitting the same muscle for an hour when you should have been hitting 4 or 5 different things. And that's where that overuse stuff comes in. And you think you got a good workout because something's happening, something's growing, but it's a lack of execution and a lack of proper programming. But it's just because there's so much bullshit out there as far as the coaches. There's just so many bad ones.
This ties into episode 2. Athletes becoming coaches. After
Yeah.
our show.
And I see it. It's like you want a show, you want an amateur show, or you got your pro card. And I'm not discrediting that because that's a crazy.
Yeah,
as an
accomplishment.
athlete,
Yeah,
that is an
absolutely.
amazing accomplishment.
Absolutely.
But just because you took a cycle and you look that way doesn't mean you know how to coach.
No, absolutely.
And doesn't mean you know how to train anybody.
Yeah.
But that's the problem.
Yeah.
As everybody sees it on Instagram, they're like, I want to look like that person. And it's that person that just so happens to be an online coach.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, cool. And they just give them some crappy program that has no explanation to it.
Well, I think a lot of people don't realize genetics plays a big role too.
Genetics plays a
Somebody's
huge role.
Yeah,
It plays a huge
genetics
role
are everything.
leading up to, I mean, there's big discrepancies in these shows, and then you get higher up, and genetics starts to not play as big of a role, but it's still there.
Oh yeah.
Like insertion wise, and so. But yeah, it does. You can get pretty far, pretty fast with your genetics, but when it comes down to like the big stuff, it's not going to get you there.
Yeah.
So
I agree, and I think like with me bringing up programming, I think one of the things that we definitely need to discuss in one of these episodes is how people are wasting their money and time with some of these programs. And you know what? I don't want to knock anybody's ability to create a business or create a goal or create their future of what they love. But what I really think is that I think the public itself socially should do more of their own due diligence of doing their own research. Because one of the things that I have learned from not just you, sis, but from you as well, Peter, was that you do encourage people to learn how to have a conversation with their body. Yeah. I mean, that's huge. I mean, if you don't know what's going on with your own body and you're trying to get me to fix it or you're trying to get me to improve it, I mean, you might as well just, tell me where Atlantis is because I ain't going to find it. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, having the ability of having a conversation with your own body and understanding it, understanding pain, understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, is huge. And I really don't think people or coaches have that conversation with them, and that's important. I think that's one of the reasons as to why I encourage people to see somebody like Peter, is because they will learn how to have a conversation with their body. They'll learn certain things about their body that they never. Oh no, my back is fine.
Yeah.
Oh no, my hips are great.
Yeah.
Oh, my legs are wonderful. My shoulders are just awesome. And then the
People
minute
just
you
come in
touch
with
them-
pain.
Oh yeah.
They're like, my back hurts, and they don't know why. And I have to be, well, it's because this. Oh, really? Well, actually, when I was in high school, I got kicked by a donkey, and like this happened. I'm like, oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
But it does make you like connect with your body more. Not only when you're working out, obviously we want to be able to connect to the fibers, but when you do that, you create this like checks and balances that are always going.
Mm-hmm.
And so when your knee's not feeling the best, or when your lower back starts to kind of before that point where you're going to reach injury. So, and then you start to know what your weaknesses are. And I always try to tell people the only way to get better is to work on your weaknesses. And I like picture a big bowl, and your strengths are these big tennis balls, right? And then you're kind of good at these things, and those are like golf balls.
Mm.
And we're not full yet. We got gaps.
Mm-hmm.
Your weaknesses are like that sand.
Mm-hmm.
We could pour sand in there and like fill
Fill in
all
everything.
these areas. And so there's always room to grow, but it's a lot better to find the weaknesses that are going to help you be stronger overall. And that's going to keep you from creating injuries too.
Right. I think this is really important. People don't realize that. I'm speaking more because of my age, but
it's longevity, though.
I see Peter once a week. You know what I mean? Like,
You'd
I
be
have been
surprised how many kids I have
4
now.
years now.
Like I had somebody on my table that was born in 2001.
wow,
So
it's becoming more and more.
So
is it because they're starting off at a young age, their body hasn't matured, and they're just kind of going in there blind or listening to somebody blind, or what would you say is the reason? Is because at 20 years, 20 years old, I was like,
it depends. Okay, so if I'm going to be real, the guys, it's because the kids are getting on gear way too young.
oh yeah, we talked
and
about that.
Last
So
couple
they're getting on
episodes.
gear, and they tying back to improper programming and muscle activation. They're strengthening these muscles, and now their muscles are stronger than the connective tissue.
Oh yeah,
And now they're just screwing themselves up.
Yeah.
With girls, they're trying to be that next like wellness competitor, like right now, and they're just beating themselves up and overworking and seeing things on TikTok where like you should roll your hips underneath and like arch your back and put band. It's like no,
Band yourself head to
Yeah.
toe.
and then so now they're just jacked up. So it's lack of information on this side, and these guys are just abusing gear, and it's just like, guys, your kids, just calm down, do your research, spend the time, and then just educate yourself.
Well, that's one of the benefits of having Peter in the arsenal is that, I don't think people, like you said, people don't understand that your muscles grow faster than the strength of your muscles and the growth of your muscles go faster than your ligaments and tendons could ever keep up.
Yeah, potentially they very much so can. Yeah.
Yes. So especially if they're going down the routes of wanting to become a competitor, or they're going down the routes of following people that they idolize. There's nothing wrong with that. I think, like one of the things that we've discussed plenty of times was that slow is fast.
Yep.
Yeah.
You did tell me, like, I remember, I was pretty effed up coming to Peter the first time. I mean, I was getting a headache.
Like every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I was seeing him 2-3 times a week.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
And I just remember you telling me, slow is fast. Take your time. Eventually, it'll go away. And now what? I mean, I'm close to maybe one a month, if that. Sometimes
That's
now.
walking out of the woods. Takes time.
Yeah.
But it's you have to set it up. Everyone just wants everything right away.
Instant gratification.
Yeah. It's just
it's the
it's the
culture,
culture we live in. It's like everything is just at the fingertips. So the body doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can push gear, you can push whatever, but the body is going to respond, and it's going to take some time.
Right.
And if you're over time, if you're doing things incorrectly, it's going to lead you in a trajectory that's completely off from what you want to be. And so just take care of yourself young and do it throughout your life.
How often do you recommend somebody to see you? If they're just a basic, the girls from the Cake Factory or some of our, how often? Not an athlete, because an athlete I think should see you more often.
I always tell people this. I say it depends on the severity of your injury, right? Because everybody's different. You could have like a little bit of a tight glute, or you could have torn a glute before, and we're working through something. Severity of the injury, how long ago it happened, and then what you're doing outside of the gym too.
Right.
Like, are you a rodeo rider? Like, do you ride bulls or do you sit at a desk? And then it's always going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We work on stuff, we free stuff up. Your life's going to happen. It's going to want to tighten back up. I tell people, if we can go, like, let's say once a week, because we have a problem. If we can make sure that we're making forward progress with that frequency and duration, then we're good. If we don't see the progress we want, then we're going to increase the frequency or the duration.
Right.
And I never try to, I want to make sure the person can heal, kind of work on it, stand on their own 2 feet, figure their body out, come back to me, talk to me about it, do it again, and kind of take those steps forward. So that's really what I tell people. You're going to feel better after my session. You're going to feel amazing. You're going to feel freer and mobile. Or maybe not if you have a lot of toxins. But then I just want you to see how your body feels. I want you to communicate with me.
Right.
And once a week is pretty normal for people because everything's on a week schedule. Our workouts are, so it's all kind of letting me be part of their schedule and integrate in and actually help them and fix them. And it's not because I'm not just like rub you, like go. I'm trying to fix some things that need some actual attention.
Right.
And so it really just depends. It's all about communication.
Right. Yeah. And also, I think like it's really important. I think you'll agree with this too, sis. Is that many of you shouldn't wait till you have an injury to see Peter. Many of you should probably already be seeing Peter, if not once every 2 weeks, just for that maintenance. I mean, do you not get an oil change? You
I
know
was
what I mean?
just gonna say that.
Do you not do certain things that have nothing to do with your body, but you do them on a regular so that they function properly?
Yeah.
So why not take that same, maybe don't go out that one time. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't go party or whatever it may be, and you take that time and I would say, towards women, I mean, it's almost like that self-care.
Yeah, add it to
the list of self-care.
Because it really is truly self-care. And it's taking care of yourself for the longevity-wise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it is something that people should realize needs to happen before you can't move your arm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've had back pain for a while and now my sciatic nerve, I can't walk. It's like, your piriformis can aggravate your sciatic nerve, just come and see me. It's probably like tight glued or something that we can work on. But people don't know.
Yeah.
People
They
don't know,
just
like
know
people
pain.
like me are out there, and people don't know, like rub some dirt on it. That's what my dad told me to do. Just rub some dirt on it. So,
Yeah.
but if you want to pay attention to your body, you want to make sure you're making some good progress, you want to stay in the game for the long run, it's something that you probably should integrate into your life, whether it's with me or someone else. Like, I am a bodywork person that tons of people come to see me, but I go get massages because I need bodywork too from doing bodywork.
Yeah, from doing bodywork, yeah.
So it's something that I 100% believe in. I do myself. I would recommend anybody gets it, because the second that we stand up, gravity is kicking our butt anyway. And so everybody's got these overuse problems that we generate, whether we're an athlete or a bartender or you sit at a desk. Like, you're creating some type of imbalance.
Yeah.
So.
No, absolutely. So I just want to thank you, number one, for coming on and, kind of explaining another aspect of health and fitness outside of what we do inside the factory or what other personal trainers do inside the gym. I don't really think that people pay much attention to, the mobility, the stretching, the muscle work of understanding how the body functions in those manners, understanding pain, understanding that there are other types of cures to that pain outside of pain meds. And really just understanding that there are those services available out there, and you're really good at providing education without even charging somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard you speak to people and just giving them the education, or just like, hey, you don't even need to see me, just sit on a roller for this, or you go buy a lacrosse ball and you'll be fine. And then if that doesn't work, come see me then. You know what I mean? So again, guys, please do your due diligence, research everything, but look into Peter, look into Muscle Medics.
The Muscle Medics, yeah. The Muscle Medics on Instagram, and actually starting next week, I'll have a new office.
That's what I was just about to get into. You're relocating, correct?
Relocating, yeah. So it's going to be 1923 Morena Boulevard.
Okay, and they can get a hold of you through the IG.
Through the IG.
Okay.
I have my website linked to the IG, and you can just go on my website, pick the time, the duration of the session. You can pick the time that you want to do it in day. You can purchase it there, so it's pretty much just easy. You click. You're in my schedule. You show up, and then we figure out what's going on.
And if you do decide to go see Peter, mention the Cake Factory.
Yeah.
Mention us, and he'll definitely take care of you. I mean, it's really important that everybody takes advantage of those services.
Yeah.
So, you're pretty quiet today, sis.
She says I never talk.
This is probably the most I've heard him talk consecutively in probably 15 years.
I think she was sitting in shock.
So yeah, this is more.
Well,
shock
I mean, like in the
anything.
beginning of the cast, I think more than anything, we were worried. You were like, "Oh, so what are we going to talk about?" I was like, "I got it."
We just throw the question. Yeah.
But all right, guys, thank you again for another episode. Check us out on all of our socials: IG, website, obviously YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Follow Peter.
The Muscle Medics.
Look into the previous episodes. Look forward to the new clips and shorts that are coming out. Also look forward to some of our basic threes. Basic 3 workouts for every muscle group. Those will be launching as well soon. We also have some new sweaters, some new gear to check out. So go on the IG, Cake Factory Training Facility, and check those out as well. And if you guys have any questions, please leave a comment, subscribe. If you don't like what I have to say, I'd love to hear it, because I'll probably come back with something even better. All right? So thank you. Good night. And we'll see you on the next episode.